Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. It's Dr. Danny, physician astrologer. Welcome to all the new subscribers and shout out to all the channel members. I am in a pattern break mode at the moment. The last week we've been driving through the desert on a road trip vacation, so if you've seen some of my shorts, that's what we've been doing. The internet is not so great out here in God's country, but the scenery is spectacular, so we've been having just a really fantastic time, and I'll have some more shorts and videos for you guys to see once I have better internet. But I wanted to record this for you because as we've been driving, I've had an opportunity to reflect on some astronomical placements, and a really big one is coming up. On the 5th of June, the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter, will be transiting into the constellation of Gemini. Not the sign, we're in the sign of Cancer, but the movement of the largest planet in our solar system shifting from Taurus to Gemini can be a big deal if we're actually watching the sky. So I wanted to bring you that information today. And one of the things you do when one of these slower planets transits into a sign is you think about what it was like the last time it was there. So for instance, when Uranus moved into Taurus, we thought we recollected back to 84 years ago as Uranus made its cycle through the zodiac. And so Jupiter cycles are much shorter. The last time Jupiter was in Gemini was 2013, 2014. So we are going to think about that, and then we're going to think about what this transit will mean. And then I wanted to show you how you can use Jupiter in your own personal chart. All you need to do is know where your natal Saturn is based on the constellations. That's super easy to do. I'll leave a link in the description to run your free chart on my website's calculator. It's powered by Mastering the Zodiac. You can put in your birth date, time, and location, and it will show you where your natal Saturn is. Once you have that piece of information, you can click to the timestamp below, click on whatever constellation your Saturn is based on that chart, and you'll get a reading about Jupiter's movement into Gemini and what part of that Jupiter-Saturn cycle that you're in. So hopefully this will be very helpful to you. Not only are we going to go over the general astrological information, but if you know where your Saturn is, this should also help you. And so just reflecting on this transfer of energy, what that means, a thought came to me, and that was the loss of the expert in the digital age. So we'll get into that. Once I start the PowerPoint, I'll go into that reflection, and then we will get through the slides. Not a lot of graphical detail on this today. I don't have a lot of time to work on the images, but the data's here, and I hope it serves you. So I'm going to share my screen, and we will get into it. So the oracle or the algorithm. I want to talk to you about the quiet collapse of the expert in the age of Jupiter and Gemini. When Jupiter last moved through Gemini in the true sky between 2013 and 2014, the world began to change in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Back then, we were standing at the edge of a digital frontier. Social media exploded. Online platforms democratized information. And for the first time in modern history, the gatekeepers of knowledge lost their monopoly on the microphone. Suddenly, you didn't need a PhD or a publishing deal to be heard. You didn't need tenure or a title to speak with authority. All you needed was a signal, something to say, and someone to say it to. And just like that, the role of the expert began to shift, quietly, fundamentally. Jupiter in Gemini magnifies the mind. It opens the airwaves, accelerates information, and amplifies every voice in the room, including the ones that maybe shouldn't be speaking so loudly. And now as Jupiter returns to Gemini in 2025, we are living in the full bloom of that shift. Artificial intelligence can now sound more expert than a human, and humans often echo artificial intelligence without realizing it. The algorithm shapes the dialogue, and the edges between what's real, what's curated, and what's downloaded have begun to blur. So who do we trust? Where are our experts? And what does it mean to even be an expert anymore? Many people aren't just looking for credentials. They're looking for coherence. They're not asking, where did you study? They're asking, do I feel more clear after listening to you? They're not asking, what do you know? They're asking, have you lived it? Jupiter in Gemini doesn't reward memorization. It rewards the integration. This transit doesn't care if you have the right answers. It wants to know if you've asked the right questions. Have you sat in the paradox? Have you reflected, mirrored, learned the spiral logic of Gemini, where everything loops, reflects, and reforms? This is the year of the embodied intellect, not performance, not perfection, just presence. This is actually a very special transit for me because Jupiter is moving into where my Saturn is. And whenever Jupiter does that, every 12 years, every 11 and a half to 12 years, you begin a new cycle of wisdom. This is where you learn, expand, integrate, and evolve. And so for me, this is the beginning of a new 12-year career cycle, a new Jupiter-Saturn energy in my life. And so I thought what I would do is, based on where y'all's personal Jupiter or Saturn is, we could read where you are in your Jupiter-Saturn cycle, and I'll read you those phases. It's very similar to the moon, so we'll get into that. So, but before I share that cycle with you and offer insights into yours, I want to just say this: I'm not here as a brand. I'm not here as a voice box for systems or softwares. I am here as someone who has walked with Jupiter. I've studied Saturn, and I have learned through living that true astrology is not something we memorize. It's something that we remember. So I will offer you the map, and you guys can navigate the energy. So the cosmic breath of Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini will expand the mind and the spirit. Okay? This is going to activate portals through words, stories, and symbols. This is the transit that opens up with language, and when Jupiter enters Gemini, the oracle meets the scribe. Words begin to weave other words, and the paradox actually becomes the path. Gemini is a sign of both the mirror and the mimicry, ruled by Mercury, so it can be trickster energy. There's reflection and refraction of the truth. But when Jupiter moves through this constellation, the real constellation in the sky, I'm not talking about the sign of Cancer, I'm talking about actual Gemini. It won't play in the shadows. It's here to illuminate the sacred code within the contradiction of the paradox. So this should be an interesting year it'll take about a year for Jupiter to move through Gemini. This is the timeline based on Capricorn Prometheus software. Jupiter will enter the constellation True Sky Gemini on June 5th of 2025. I don't know if I have those degrees right. Very shortly after that, and you guys will have a video dropping out of the members section and into the general public in a few days as well, talking about the Jupiter-Sun cycle. This begins with a Jupiter-Sun conjunction on June 24th of 2025. Then this summer, later on in August, we will have a Jupiter, Venus, and Sirius conjunction. This is the scorcher planet with the millionaire and the billionaire planet. So this should be pretty intense and actually wonderfully full of blessings. So we'll be decoding that as we get closer to it. On October 20th, Jupiter will enter the constellation of Cancer, will station retrograde 3 weeks later, and then re-enter Gemini in December. So it spends a very short time in Cancer during its forward movement, stationing, and then retrograde. Then we'll move backwards into Gemini for several months, station direct on March 10th, then re-enter Cancer on June 2nd. And so that will complete Jupiter's transit through Gemini, and this dance is going to stretch across nearly a full year. There's definitely an unmistakable emphasis on language as medicine, duality as a gateway, and memory as a star map. With this Sirius activation in mid-August, there's going to be a flood of ancestral intelligence and galactic frequencies that may come through those attuned to the signal. Now, what's Jupiter about? So, Jupiter in Gemini, right? This is the great benefic. It's like an amplifier of the cosmic potential of Gemini. So while Pluto destroys the ego of these archetypes, Jupiter expands everything. Jupiter is also the guru, the teacher, the giver of grace, and the expander of the field. So wherever Jupiter moves, he's going to pull the threads of opportunity, of faith, and of learning into the fabric of the moment. Okay, so Jupiter doesn't just bring the growth, he brings the spiritual meaning to the chaos. He rules the synchronicities. Jupiter is the higher octave of abundance, not because of wealth, but because of the wisdom that Jupiter can bring here in Gemini. When Jupiter speaks, it's often through a whisper in your own mind, or through a sentence that cracks you open, or through a moment of uncanny knowing that was waiting to arrive. So when we think about true sky Gemini, it actually begins later than the tropical Gemini. It's rooted in the binary stars of Castor and Pollux. Gemini is a very clever and curious energy. These stars, Castor and Pollux, describe the story of the twin flame energy of divine contradiction, right? So this is also part of the Milky Way galaxy, but it's the outer bands, wherever the border between Taurus and Gemini. So when Jupiter passes through here, he's not simply activating that logical mind. There's also an opening of neural gateways that mimic the duality of the cosmos itself. Gemini is a sign that governs the hands, the lungs, and the nervous system. So tactile channeling, right? Like creating art to channel the divine wisdom or inspiration that you're using. Breath work can also be a big part of how we work with Jupiter, with our lungs, and then typing out the channeled message. So like, what do they call it? Ghostwriting, not ghostwriting, but channeled writing, right? And then we have the mirror of the cosmos, where Castor and Pollux are two parts of the same soul. So what that means is that Gemini does not split, it mirrors. And through this mirroring, it heals. If you've ever seen an animal or a baby walk up to a mirror for the first time and they sort of look at it and they see their reflection moving, it's kind of unsettling at first until you realize that that's your reflection. And under Jupiter's gaze, Gemini reveals its highest octave to you through that mirror. The sacred dialogue between the body and the soul, the self and the other, the mind and the cosmos. It's not a year to shut down any of these contradictory thoughts. In fact, it's time to welcome them in, like two voices of the same choir, just in different octaves. So Jupiter's going to amplify this distance, not to confuse us, but to birth a more layered truth. And also because of the dual nature of Gemini, we often think of DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid, the two strands, the double helix spiraling through our cells like the twin serpents of a cosmic caduceus. So when Jupiter's present here in Gemini, Gemini becomes a living glyph of quantum intelligence, a portal to see the self reflected in every other. So when we think about this transit, let's think back to 2013, 2014. Think back in your own life. What was going on with you when Jupiter was transiting through Gemini? When I think about it in general for the collective, I think about a time of technological acceleration, social media proliferation. I remember this. I was actually pretty slow to get a smartphone. I had a flip phone forever, and for about 2 years I watched people gaze forward as they walk, now are suddenly always looking down. I also noticed that when I would spend time with my family, there would be a lot of looking down at the telephones, and now that's just simply what we do. So this technical acceleration, I believe we can see this again in this coming transit. So a rapid shift in 2013, 2014 in how we share, how we speak, and how we seek the truth. It also coincided with a rise of algorithm-driven content and the birth of many online influencers and independent thought leaders. Also the Snowden revelations in June of 2013, exposing mass surveillance and reshaping global conversations about information, privacy, and truth. And with quantum computing, we're going to have to revisit that too, because quantum computers can literally break blockchain algorithms and passwords. the last qubit computer feat solved a mathematical problem that was supposed to take the entire length of the universe's life to solve with a supercomputer, solved it in 5 minutes. So there won't be any privacy. It's almost as if we have to kind of get used to that. So there may be a surge in online activism, meme culture, crowdsourced knowledge, and decentralizing of authority structures. And then there was the spread of conspiracy and alternative knowledge in communities. That's always been around, but they certainly got a foothold on the internet and have been able to influence a lot more people. So it expands into spiritual decoding, numerology, real sky astrology, and metaphysical inquiry. If it wasn't for the internet and this transit 11, 12 years ago, we may not have had the ability to spread the truth about the real sky. So Jupiter and Gemini expanded the collective nervous system through the internet. The world began to think in hyperlinks, and dialogue shifted from long-form essays to bite-sized interconnected threads. So this wasn't just about speed, it was also about seeding of multidimensional thought. Gemini, remember that trickster mirror where you're not sure if it's really you. Jupiter here reveals how the truth is shaped by the questions we ask and the stories we tell. So many creators, thinkers, and visionaries who found their voice during this period are now midwifing a new paradigm. Jupiter's return into Gemini 2025 invites us to re-engage the mind, but from a higher octave of discernment and heart coherence. Now there is a shadow side of Jupiter in Gemini. This expansion of the mind can certainly amplify distortions and shadow energy, and so we must be vigilant of the traps that are within our minds. Gemini is ruled by multiplicity, right? So it loves data, questions, patterns, contradictions, but it also needs discernment. And you can definitely spiral into overthinking, overstimulation, and information addiction under this influence. Jupiter will consume. Jupiter's gaze, it's going to be an inflated intellect, believing that knowledge alone leads to transformation. It's the integration as well. That's why I'm bringing Saturn into this at the end, because you can't just do Jupiter. You've got to do Jupiter with Saturn, because when you have a structure and a form to expand into, especially in Gemini energy, it makes it all that much better to work with both. We can also awaken the trickster mind here, not as divine play, but as a distortion, where words become weapons. Truths can be twisted to win arguments rather than build bridges. And we may see an amplification of artificial intelligent voices, false prophets, a linguistic overload, if you will, as well as a collective obsession with naming things before we've even embodied them. So the challenge of Jupiter and Gemini is to stop confusing mental mastery with spiritual knowledge. This is a time to refine your signal, not to tune in to every single frequency that makes noise. Jupiter does not punish, he expands. But if your mind is a sacred vessel, you must be filled with the light. Your mind is a maze of fear, and you will amplify that confusion. So choose your input wisely. Don't watch things that scare you or can overexpand under Jupiter's influence. All right, so how do we work with Jupiter in Gemini? Well, one of those ways is to link it up with Saturn and to check into your Jupiter-Saturn cycle. But in general, if you don't want to watch that part of the video, you can just do these simple things, right? You want to, when you speak, when you listen with intention, speak with meaning. Don't just be a student, but a sacred scribe. Don't just be a seeker, but be a translator of this divine paradox. Let people know the duality that you're observing, because Gemini isn't linear, right? It'll teach through twinning, through spirals, through reflection. And the path here is to develop discernment in your thinking. Practice mental fasting, right? Turn off stuff that's input and say, does this thought serve in my expansion? And if the answer is yes, then it's fine. If it gives you anxiety, or if it makes you feel scattered or disconnected, then it does not. You can journal and document what you know. Let writing be your altar. Let your fingers become your oracles. I'm certainly going to be writing a lot more now that Jupiter is here. There's just a huge expansion in how I want to write and what I want to write. Learn the art of dialogue. This is a perfect time. True communication is a sacred act. Speak to connect, not to convince. If somebody starts to tell you a story, ask them questions about it. Be interested in it. And then you never know what you might learn. Use breath and mantra as medicine. Learn fire breathing. Learn Ujjayi breathing. Gemini rules the lungs, and so if you decide that you want to work on or learn how to do breath work, this is a great time to do that as well. So, like inhale the divinity and exhale that which doesn't serve you. Even if you just speak that with every breath that you can, that'll help you in a lot of ways. And recognize that words are alive. Jupiter in Gemini brings the mind of God to the human voice, and this is the time to shape that language into light. So Jupiter is not just gifting us knowledge, he's inviting us to participate in creation, right? Pisces is the dream, Aries is the spark, Taurus is the vessel, Gemini is the code. To speak is to spell, to name is to remember, and to listen is to receive. So this is the year to speak only that which you wish to multiply. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this Jupiter-Saturn cycle and how this works. So you will want to go to that free chart. I'll put the link up here in a moment, but down in the description below, and put in your details and locate this symbol right here in your chart. Mine is in Gemini. My Saturn is in Gemini. And so what I'm going to watch is the movement of Jupiter through its cycles with respect to the position of my natal Saturn. So this is transiting Jupiter here, and this would be your natal Saturn. And when Jupiter is conjunct your natal Saturn, that is at the beginning of a Jupiter-Saturn cycle that lasts approximately 12 years. And it's very coincident with your career cycles. So I always go through some sort of transitory phase when I am in this part of my Jupiter-Saturn cycle. When I go back, I'm 50 years old, and so I've had several returns of Jupiter to my natal Saturn, and I have seen this pattern. So you will too. All right. So what you'll want to do is go ahead and grab your chart, find out where your Saturn is. Understand that this cycle is very similar to a lunar cycle. So when Jupiter and Saturn, when the transiting Jupiter is over your natal Saturn, that is a new quote-unquote moon for the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. And when Jupiter is opposing your natal Saturn, then it is a full moon. And so you have that full cycle that you move around with Jupiter and Saturn. So go ahead and get your chart there, and then you can join me in these readings. And you can jump to where yours is. So normally this is an 8-phase cycle for the moon, but we have 12 areas of the sky. We combine Ophiuchus and Scorpio. And so I just opened it up a little bit. There's 2 crescent phases. So we have a new phase, which would be if you had a natal Saturn in Gemini right now, this would be a new Jupiter-Saturn cycle for you. Then we have the crescent phase where Jupiter has moved beyond your natal Saturn. So when Jupiter is in Cancer next year, I will be in a crescent 1 phase. So I am starting at the top here with this year, and over the next 12 years I will move through each of these phases. So what I'm going to do for you is, based on your natal Saturn, I'm going to tell you what phase you are in right now. So the new phase is seeding, it's commitment, it's initiating structure, long-term vision, and beginnings. The crescent one, think of that that waxing moon right after the new moon. In fact, we're probably in that cycle right now. It's a crescent. You can see it in the western sky just as the sun is setting. So it's subtle stirrings, early momentum, and sensing what wants to grow. While a little further in the cycle, we have energetic emergence, spiritual prompting, and intuitive activation. Now that first square that occurs, this is not like a natal square. This is a tension, a challenge, or a decision, a growth through pressure. It's like meeting that fork in the road of the river. Which way are you going to go around that fork so you meet back on the other side of it? Then there's the departing trine. which happens right after the quarter, and this flows this is openness, this is optimism, this is new systems beginning to take shape because of that growth through the challenge. And then then you have a waxing gibbous, or a waxing Jupiter within your Saturn cycle, and this is where we refine. This is where things start to move, to realign, and to strengthen the path that you're on. And then when Jupiter is opposing your natal Saturn, this is like the full moon. This is the culmination, the karmic mirror, the visibility, the realization, and the test of mastery. And this is where you begin to reap what you sow as Jupiter continues to move and wane. And during that waning phase, there is integration, sharing wisdom, and letting go of what no longer serves. And then there's the approaching trine after that, which supports return, simplification, and return to inner clarity. And then that last square between Jupiter and your natal Saturn, there's an evaluation and a restructuring, a clearing of blocks to completion. And then that last phase, there's a rest, a release, and an intuitive withdrawal. And then we finally end the cycle with the final integration, karmic closure, and preparing inner ground for the new. So you'll want to come back to this slide after you find out what phase you are in. All right, so I ran my chart. This is not my chart, but I put Saturn where my natal Saturn is, and Jupiter will be moving into Gemini. I actually moved it to the date where Jupiter and Venus were going to be conjunct, basically right in the middle of the Gemini energy. And that's over my Saturn. So this, if any of you share a Gemini Saturn with me, you are also at the beginning of a new Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So this is a sacred reset. Jupiter meets your natal Saturn to initiate a new 12-year karmic growth cycle. Gemini's energy here is alive with potential. Ideas are blooming, messages are landing, and contracts are forming. But this is not a loud beginning. It's a whisper from deep within, inviting you to recommit to your soul's architecture. You're being asked to build something new, something that stretches your thinking and upgrades your self-concept. This is a potent time for new structures, new teachings, long-term plans, or visionary systems of thought. So be intentional here. The seeds that you plant now may define your life for the next 12 years. All right. Now, for those of you that have Saturn in Cancer, you are at the end. That when Jupiter moves into Cancer next year, in 2026 and 27, that will be a new cycle for you. So you can read that phase 1 part of it, that new cycle next year. But right now you're completing this phase, okay? So this is the final days of your old cycle. This is the last year. This is the threshold moment. The seeds of the next chapter are stirring underground. Cancer's emotional and ancestral waters are being subtly awakened by Jupiter's proximity, and you may feel waves of closure, nostalgia, or deep longing. Let them move through you. Something is being released. This phase asks that you trust. You may not feel ready to begin again, and that's okay. Focus on nourishing your nervous system, honoring where you've been, and preparing the inner soil. The new cycle officially begins when Jupiter re-enters Cancer next year, but you're already being tuned into this energy. I went through this last year as Jupiter was moving through Taurus. There was a longing to be in the next space, but I had to let those waves of nostalgia move through me. I had to become what I am now in order for this new cycle to start. And so next year you will be in that new phase where you have a new Jupiter-Saturn cycle. All right, if you were born with natal Saturn in Leo, this is the semi-square energy, right? Or the sextile energy. Saturn in Leo holds your karmic expression of leadership, pride, and radiant heart energy. With Jupiter and Gemini semi-squaring this position, or sextiling this position, friction or an opportunity may arise between what you know and what you feel called to embody. So this is a phase of courageous exploration, testing your voice, your visibility, and your willingness to share your truth, even if it disrupts the known order. So remember, this is kind of like 11th house energy. So don't rush to define yourself. This is a phase about becoming. Experiment with boldness, but stay grounded. And then these sparks are part of your ignition. All right. So now we move into Saturn in Virgo. So this will be the departing square energy. This is a moment of tension. So this year, Jupiter and Gemini is squaring under your natal Saturn. This is going to be a clash between expansion and precision. Virgo's gift is discernment, but if overactivated, it can become paralyzing perfectionism. You may feel pressured to produce results or to prove your value, but the square isn't about rushing. It's asking you to act with integrity, even if the path forward is unclear. So remember, this is your third quarter. This is you sort of at the end of your dissemination phase. The final tests of your entire cycle are here, and in 3 years you will be completing your cycle. So this should be closing it out. Check into all of your systems, test all your systems, your schedule, your nervous system, lean into practical magic and choose clarity over control. Take aligned action, even if it feels imperfect, and the breakthrough will come through physical movement of the body. All right. So now, if you were born with Saturn in Libra, the current transiting Jupiter is 8 houses, I believe, from your natal Saturn, and in a approaching trine. So what's coming here is that something is coming into form. This should be a time of enjoyment of your Jupiter-Saturn cycle. This is where you're reaping all the benefits that you've sowed from that first square to the full moon, or the full moon phase of your Jupiter-Saturn cycle. But you're on the cusp of a transition. This is a transition year for this full cycle to change you and to turn you into the next thing that you're going to start letting go of things, integrating things, and seeding for the next cycle. So even though it's going to feel really good because of everything that you have already achieved, you're also going to be approaching that time within a year or two where letting go, changing, and realigning. So this is going to be a very smooth current between the mind and structure, between idea and agreement, and between thought and justice. It's a time to collaborate, negotiate, and re-establish harmony in your commitments. Saturn in Libra has taught you that balance is a responsibility, and Jupiter expands that lesson into the social and the spiritual realms. So it's a good time to build bridges, initiate contracts, revisit old partnerships with a new lens. The structures you create now can be elegant and beautiful and lasting. All right. So now we are in the quincunx phase. Essentially, this is right after the full harvest energy. The last year, as Jupiter was moving through your Taurus, with Saturn in Ophiuchus and Scorpio, you were going through sort of a relationship transition energy, and now you're into this post full moon waning phase. So this is going to be subtle and deeply transformative for you. The energy of Scorpio and Ophiuchus is intense, probing, and unrelenting. You guys are basically the chaos managers, and Jupiter in Gemini is trying to make sense of that chaos in your life, especially after that full expression of the peak of your Jupiter Saturn cycle. So you're trying to find meaning in this cycle right now. What has it taught you? What do you want to learn next? So you need to allow some space for mystery. There might be a little bit of discomfort here, not really knowing where you stand, what is actually true. You don't even have a name for what's shifting yet, but your subconscious does know that, and it is kind of like a karmic crescendo, a rising tide of insight that will not come through logic. So be willing to sit with paradox, be willing to be a little bit confused and delighted when the unexpected comes through for you. Okay? All right. So now, if you have Saturn in Sagittarius, this is going to be the full expression of your Jupiter-Saturn cycle. The light is on. Jupiter in Gemini is directly opposite your natal Saturn, revealing the full story of your karmic trajectory over the last 6 years. You might experience a mirror, like a person or an event or a message or an incident that reflects your path back to you. And so this can bring you visibility, it can bring you confrontation, it can bring you harvest. You want to ask yourself, have my beliefs actually matured? Has my truth deepened? And have my philosophies held up for what I've been achieving? So here what you want to do is balance faith with facts, vision with the integration. Not everything that's grand is going to be grounded in the real world, and not everything that is grounded is small potatoes. So if you can bridge both, this can become a radiant emergence here and an opportunity for you to really shine. All right, if you were born with natal Saturn in Capricorn, this is going to be a phase of refined mastery. So this is a waxing Jupiter for you. You are about to reach the peak of your 12-year career cycle. And Jupiter in Gemini is encouraging connection and exchange, while Saturn in Capricorn holds your soul's architectural blueprints. So the angle between them is a little bit awkward, but it's fruitful. You're being asked to let go of rigidity and to share what you've built in a new way. This may mean mentoring, teaching, or even editing your life's work. So Saturn in Capricorn, I know this is hard for you guys, but release the need for perfection. You are not here to hold it all together forever. You're here to pass on the essence of what you've earned. There's grace in letting go of what no longer defines you. All right, if you have natal Saturn in Aquarius, you are again in an expanding phase. This is a trine energy. This is right after your square year. You had your first Jupiter square with Saturn, and so now you get to begin reaping the benefits. You're about to go into the full expression of this phase in the next year or two. So you are beginning to transmit. Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn in Aquarius are allies of the mind, the collective, and the networked intelligence of the cosmos. This is going to be a great year for you. It's brilliant. It's an open air corridor of like thought leadership, cosmic synthesis, and visionary downloads. You are ahead of the curve. Others may not get you yet, but you don't even care. So this phase is going to support innovation, dissemination, and systems that serve the future. So let your downloads become dialogues. Teach, share, encode. You are the conduit now. Be generous with what you know. All right, moving around the wheel. So this is going to be the first quarter phase for those of you with Saturn in Pisces. You guys are having either your first Saturn return or your second Saturn return or your third Saturn return right now, because Saturn is in Pisces at the moment. So this is a big deal for you guys because you're having a Saturn return and then a Jupiter squaring onto your natal Saturn. This is the crisis of clarity. Jupiter in Gemini is asking you to articulate. Saturn in Pisces is resisting this categorization. So they're in conflict now. Jupiter in Pisces is like the blind leading the blind. And you may feel torn between explaining your experience and surrendering to the mystery. The old structures may no longer fit, but the new ones are not fully formed yet either. So why don't you think of this square, instead of as like a punishment for not knowing all the facts, as a spiritual refinement. You're being asked to dissolve any illusions and find the truth that can be lived, not just believed. Let go of roles, identities, and rules that are no longer real. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I'm supposed to? Or am I doing this because it's truth? So the truth will emerge from what remains. All right, Saturn in Aries. So this is the first sextile of the Jupiter-Saturn sextile cycle for you guys. This is an opportunity for supportive movement and expression, autonomy and initiation. So this is a great time to start thinking and creating projects, ideas that will last, right? So this is inner clarity. This is time to begin to gather your tools to launch something new. So you're going to feel the impulse. You're going to want to move. You should definitely honor both, but try to stay focused, because there is a tendency to want to create 17 new projects all at once here for you Aries Saturn. But don't focus on one thing and throw yourself into that. Okay? All right. Finally, we have Saturn in Taurus. So you guys just went through last year your Saturn returns, either your first, second, or third Saturn return, and now you are into the first new phase of your Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So this is the beginning. This is everything that you hold stable, physical, and secure. Jupiter wanting you to expand and examine and look at that to see what roles no longer resonate, what no longer connects with you on a physical level. You're also going to begin having some karmic ideas about values, sustainability, and embodied commitment. So this is like the sacred inhale. Getting ready at the very edge of the inhale to begin a new cycle that will start with an embodied vision, an embodied excitement, and an embodied expansion around value. All right, so guys, that is the presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll go live probably when I get back into town and we get back into the swing of things, but yeah, we'll finish out this week here. Stellar Foundations is going to meet on the 9th. Sorry for a long respite between our meetings. We have a lot to catch up on, but I look forward to seeing you guys. And then, of course, don't forget to get the book, Ophiuchus, the 13th Sign, and the Astrology They Don't Want You to See. The link for that book is below. You can go to my website to get the audiobook narrated by me, or the ebook, and the actual printed copy. They're already doing book clubs around my book. We're doing pretty well on Amazon. I'd love for those of you that have already read it to please leave me a nice and kind review. And then, of course, the International Society, or the International Sidereal Astrology Association is kicking into gear. We're on September 27th, I want to say, we are doing our keynote address with that group, so I'm excited about that. I'm working on that topic. So many things to do when I get back, many things to think about while I'm here. But I miss you guys, and I look forward to connecting with you. Take care. Bye.